What's going on, party people? We are back.
What is going on up in here?
Back again, man.
Going on.
Wait. And thank God the news cycle the past 72 hours just gave us a lot of ammunition. So we're going to be plenty of things to talk about tonight. So
my gosh. It was like one thing after another. It was just like boom, boom, boom. It's been crazy.
Yeah, there's things we had that didn't make the cut. There's big things happening.
Yeah, it's like, well, why even talk about Uncle Nearest with all this other stuff going on? You know, it's just too much. All right, so make sure we stay on time. Let's go ahead. Let's get it kicked off, and we'll get to bed at an early time. It's almost the end of summer hours, so I'm kind of really nervous about that one. Here we go.
I know kids going to school soon.
Yeah, I know. It's bad. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon. I'm Kenny Coleman.
Fred Minnick here.
And if you're wondering where Ryan's at, he's now on his, we're in July, so it's at least 4 or 5 vacations now. He's racked up in the first half of the year, so he's actually getting ready. He's finishing up his 2-week tour in Hawaii. So
wow.
I know. You know, he texted me a couple days ago, and actually what it was actually 2 weeks ago before he was actually going on this trip. We were here in the studio. I don't know. He was doing something. He was like doing some squats, like getting ready to go. He's like, I'm not looking forward to this, this 11-hour plane trip and whatever. And I was like, Ryan, absolutely no one feels bad for you right now.
Well, didn't he have all those issues?
Rough life.
But in his defense, he had all those issues going to Europe, right? So like, I can understand his fear of flying 11 hours.
Man up and pay for first class. Then you can go ahead and walk around and, drink it off with the free Woodford on the plane or whatever it's going to be.
By God.
It's always that too. But no, he'll be back this week and it'll be good at some point. Maybe I could take a vacation. I don't know when that's going to be, but maybe.
Where would you go? What's a dream vacation for you, Kenny?
A dream vacation?
Mm-hmm. I'd go see Marshmallow in Milan.
No, thanks to Blake. Actually going to see him on Friday this week, though. He's playing at the Red Stadium, so it's more of a family friendly thing, though. But I tell you what I've always wanted. I've never been to anywhere in Asia. I would love to have like a Sherpa show me around and like because obviously I can't speak, either Japanese, Chinese, Thai, anything like that. I would love to do like a whole Asian kind of tour and be able to like take in all the culture and stuff like that. But I need somebody to kind of be like, no, you got to go here. You should eat this. Don't eat that, but you should try this. That way it doesn't have to feel like everywhere I go, especially if I go to Thailand, be like, well, I guess I'm getting pad Thai again. I want somebody to sit there and really kind of give me the full treatment.
That's awesome. You know what? Food's great out there. You just got to do it. Take the family.
What about you? That you asked me, Fred, I'm kind of interested. Where would your dream vacation be?
You know what? I would love to go to like Russia and like some of those kinds of countries that are like really restricted. When the restrictions are pulled, like I'd love to go to somewhere like Iran. I'd love to go to Russia. Some of that kind of old culture. That was one of the things when I was writing Mead. I became fascinated with that, like the Russian, medieval Russia and places like that. I that would be really cool. Anything that's got like a history angle to it, I would just eat it up. I'd love it. One place I would not want to go like in the jungles, like where a bunch of snakes are, and like you get bit by like like some kind of insect and your face just falls off. I don't want to go.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and take jungles and maybe part of Australia off the map for you then too.
Yeah, Australia could be cool. You can find non insect deaths in Australia. I did see someone in the chat like, "Oh, cheap flights in Iran right now." My passion for like Iran's like they have so many cool culture things like wrestling that I love. So it's a huge wrestling country. So is Russia. So
Russia's definitely big. I know that.
Yeah, they're the 2 best wrestling countries in the world.
All right. Well, we talked about our vacations, but let's quickly introduce everybody on the round table as well, and be brief. If you had a dream vacation, where it's going to be. Nick, you're first.
Hey, all, Nick with Breaking Bourbon. How are you guys? So, dream vacation. Maybe I'm not shooting as wild as venturous as you guys, but I really like the idea of getting out to those islands. Fiji, something like that. Just one of those places where you're out on the water. Just walk out surrounded by water. You can just take a slide down into the ocean and just relax for the whole day, the whole week. Have great food and just chill out. So, for me, that's my dream vacation. Someday, guys, we'll make it happen. And then from there, Europe. I won't go too long, but I've not been to Europe yet. Love to do a European tour, so that's also on the list.
Yeah. You said you were like, maybe I'm not shooting high enough. I thought you were gonna be like Daytona Beach, Florida. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Orlando.
Orlando.
Both
where
great
Mickey's
options.
ears are just as
Both
big
in
as your
Florida. And
Gonna visit Blake and drink all his
Yeah.
bourbon. That's the dream vacation.
Well, Blake, you already chimed in. Go ahead.
yeah, Blake from Sealbox. Always fun to be back here. And my dream vacation is, Louisville, Kentucky to visit Trial and Error. I still haven't been able to knock that one off the list. But bucket list, it's called bucket list for a reason. So, yeah, I don't know. At this point, we're in the stage where, like, if you vacation without kids, you feel bad. And with you vacation with kids, you're vacationing with your kids and like breaking up fights every 30 minutes. So I don't even know what a dream would be right now. A nice quiet room where I don't have a phone and people. But, that's the dream I'm on right now. Other than
Silence
that, I
of a
don't know.
sandwich, as some people say,
Yeah.
right? That's all you want.
Yeah.
All right. And Brian, what about you?
Hey, this is Brian with Sipping Corn, Bourbon Justice. Dream vacation is to go back to ancestral homes. Maybe that means I'm the old guy or whatever, but family came from where Finland and Sweden meet, right up, about as high as you can get over there. So I'd like to do the Finland, Sweden, just do the whole Scandinavian tour.
Okay, actually, Brian and I are going to do our dream vacation together because we're going to throw
Sweet.
Denmark into that same ancestral visit, and we're going to visit Reeb, Denmark, so we can see where the Reebers came from.
Oh, absolutely. We're doing that.
Spring 2027. Let's go.
Yep, we're there. Book it.
Is that also like area where you see the Northern Lights and all that sort of stuff too?
Yeah, you're plenty far north to see all that.
That would actually be pretty cool. I mean, I know that we've quote unquote seen them here in Louisville, but you had to use your phone to see it and all that sort of stuff too. But that's a completely different thing, I think, when you can kind of see it with your naked eye around there. But let's go ahead and dive into it. We've got two kind of big doozies to kind of talk about today, and we'll split it up in the first half and the second half of the show. And if it runs a little bit longer than usual, then we probably should have talked about vacations. But this first one was last week. We kind of saw on Friday that Moonshine University has decided to go ahead and start closing operations starting on December 31st after 14 years. So they said some of the stats here that did 337 courses, 15,000 students, 50 different states, 49 countries, and roughly 300 distilleries were launched as a part of doing this. And as we start thinking about the closing of this, like what does this essentially mean for the health of the industry? They kind of painted the picture that anybody that wanted to get educated, like they've pretty much already did it, and now it's kind of start winding it down. Do we really think that's the case, or do we think it's a sign of the times of consolidation that people are just aren't going into the industry as much on the distiller side, and maybe there's opportunities to look at other types of education that are probably going to be needed if people do want to start getting into this industry?
Yeah, and I think also Moonshine was very specific. They had a very structured business plan, and they also had another revenue earning arm of that company in Flavorman. So that there's nothing been that's been correct. There's been nothing affected on that arm of their company, Flavorman, like that's still in existence, and there's nothing impacted on that. Isn't that right, Kenny?
No, I that's the other thing about this too, is that when you look at the entity that is Flavorman, anybody that doesn't know Flavorman, they've been on the show a long, long time ago. They're the ones that help formulate Fireball. They're the ones that help formulate a lot of the different flavored types of drinks that are in the market today. So yeah, they're doing okay in regards of that health side of the business. I think this was created as just another revenue model, and
Mhm.
it's one of those things that as running a business, you kind of have to figure out where you're going to start chopping some limbs off if you're going to look at the health of the business.
Yeah, I remember when they first started it. And like remember the conversations. This was like a new recruiting avenue initially as well, to say like, hey, you all are starting this. We can help you all get your cola situated. We can also help you with getting barrels. And if you would like a flavor packet, well, we got you there too. But it grew into something far deeper than that, and it became a beacon of education for the entire industry, and they did such a great job with that. But they also created an arm with the Stave and Thief society, or the Stave and Thief certification. That was something that the consumers and the bartenders and people who aspired to be ambassadors could go after. And it's a real sad day, because we've lost some of that, because they were an anchor of enthusiasm amongst people getting into the business, as well as those who follow it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, the whole Moonshine University thing, I do kind of get that aspect. Like they were starting when distilleries were expanding from, call it a few hundred to a few thousand. So there's just going to be less of a pool of people to pull from that are starting something new, opening a brand, all those kind of things. And education's out there everywhere. And on the Stave and Thief side, at first I was kind of like, okay, like you see the Stave and Thief in their bio. What does this even mean? But the more you kind of get into it, you realize they were just out there. They were hosting courses at different retailers, distilleries across the country, and really just educating people on bourbon. Now, certainly some people could make it a little more about themselves to highlight the fact that they were a Stave and Thief member, but I feel like it was just good education, getting bourbon out there to people who were just getting excited about it. I think that's kind of the bigger piece that we'll miss from this whole thing. Certainly Moonshine University was a good program, but the whole Stave and Thief theme of just actively going out there and letting people do this class to learn more about whiskey, to get more interested in it, what makes it exciting. That person's going to continue on to be a much bigger customer and, involved in the community because of that. And I feel like that's a big loss. It's kind of like when I think it was Bullet or somebody cut their ambassador program, and it's like you understand it's a money thing, but at the same time those people were actively in bars, restaurants, retailers, just talking about products and bourbon and introducing people to whatever brand they're a part of. So I think that's kind of the bigger loss in my eyes. Just that education piece is so important. And now it's kind of back to the less organized version of it, of you just go into Facebook groups and get yelled at by people for posting the wrong bottle or something.
That's not going anywhere. And I'm glad you brought up the Stave and Thief. I mean, it was kind of like they really anchored that brand, and it really helped. I don't want to say like boost a little bit of the enthusiasm, but I would say for the enthusiasts that were out there, and you're not going to you're not going to start a brand. You want to have something behind you that says, hey, I'm educated, I could do this. For a lot of people, they use that executive bourbon steward to launch their own, like, hey, I'm going to create a tasting business, and then I can go and do tastings at people's houses and do that. Right. I mean, it gave a little bit of a rubber stamp of approval for those kinds of things. But I will go ahead and raise my hand. Like, I never went and took the tests. I never became an executive bourbon steward, namely because now I've been doing this show for so long. If I went and took it and failed, I'd feel like such a poser. So I was like, I'm just going to save myself from the ridicule and embarrassment if I did fail it. But for the most part, I mean, it was something that a lot of people in the enthusiast world, that you kind of took that as an initial step, and hopefully when you got that, you felt a little bit more closer to the spirit, a little more closer to the product, and able to champion it just a little bit more as well too.
I was trying to look at the enthusiasts who got into this, Kenny, and are there two kinds of enthusiasts? There's the enthusiast who does this as a hobby or whatever to get away from your job, and then there's the people who want it to become their job. And are those the people who went to Moonshine to get these certifications and get this education? Because those are the people that are going to miss it. And I don't know that the enthusiasts who are just more hobby centric are going to know it's gone.
Yeah, and Ryan took that master distillers course or whatever, and I think it was like a $5,000 course, and he was like, "We should have taken this when we first started the business because we learned so much." And for $5,000, it's a pretty good crash course on what you can get. And there's probably a lot of people that take the course and realize, "Hey, we probably shouldn't do this because of all the shit we're getting ready to get into." But now you're looking at, if you were to kind of say, "Hey, is this a business I want to get into?" I mean, other than listening to this podcast, paying somebody that has been on this podcast before as a consultant to come in, you're probably going to spend over $5,000 just to figure out the scratching the surface level of what it takes to run this business. So that is the other kind of side of it. Is I think there's now a loss in a pocket out there that needs to be filled.
Another aspect of this is that this did keep distillers active in a like a little side gig, if you will, like a little extra employment, for the people who taught. And that's a very underestimated piece of the loss here, is that it was an extra avenue for someone like from a small distillery like Paul Tomaszewski, who taught there. There's an extra little marketing angle for him. Like these guys, like Matt Strickland, I think he taught out there for a bit. They were able to get their names out, and that helps for their employment down the road. If someone's in there as an investor or is starting to open a distillery, or they want to buy some barrels. I mean, it was a massive networking thing for the industry. It was great in so many ways. And the one thing that I will say, and you're seeing, you see it a lot when you're out at a whiskey fest or some kind of just random whiskey event. They wear the Stave and Thief pin, right? People were so proud of that. And I'm not saying that their knowledge was at a high level, but it was like, it was almost like its own little fraternity of people who were in that. And it just was a nice piece of the culture. And I would hope that Defoe and the other owners of Moonshine University did take a look at shopping this, selling it, because I think that there would have been massive value from someone to acquire it and turn it into, to keep it going, because there is curriculum out there. There is curriculum needed. I mean, for God's sake, University of Phoenix could have turned that thing into a gold mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's, what was it? Patrick on here in the comments said, says, "I like this." And he said, when he went into his class and he took a weekend of it, he said that not only they're enthusiasts, but they were brand reps there. And I would just realize, it was like, wow, I forgot, I came from a corporate education background where people have to get schooled up. They have to be able to know what to do on day one before they go in. And wholesalers, people in the industry, tasters, I mean, you name it. How often can you go into a Facebook forum and then you see the Jack Daniels isn't a bourbon debate, right? It's always there, but you're able to give a baseline foundation to so many people, and everybody's reading from the same playbook. And by doing that, you create this layer of education that you can say, hey, you're going to be joining us on the wholesale side. We'll use RNDC since they're not around. Be like, hey, you're joining us at RNDC. Before you get ready to go out and sell whiskey, we need you to go ahead and take this 3-hour course so you know about bourbon, right? Like, that's an easy win for anybody that's out there. And you take that and you scale that up. It's how many people, thousands of people inside this, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people inside this industry, whether you're at a distributor or you're working behind the bar or you are an enthusiast. Like, when you do something like that and you have a common playbook, then all of a sudden a lot of the misconceptions can start going away.
I think I've got a little bit of a hot take on what's going on. I think it's more symbolic of what's happening right now with the industry. We had this swell of distillers, and you could start a distillery and they were just popping up everywhere, and there was enthusiasm around them, and there was patience for them learning, and you really could get your local area involved in your distillery if you created one. We all have lived through that. That has been an amazing time for all of us to live through, where everyone could kind of survive, at least, and they had a little bit of room to make product and things like that. But now we're seeing kind of the thing that none of us have seen ourselves, if we've been through this, as we've been through this journey with bourbon, is this kind of shrinking side and the consolidation, I think, that's coming with that. You take Flavorman, the other side of the business, there's massive opportunity right now, because you've got brands that are, they're going to have to really extend what they're doing. They're going to have to get into RTDs. They're not going to know how to do it. Maybe they're good on the distilling side. They've got that local market. They're starting to get distribution. They're going to start to see other competitors go away, and now they've got to expand that market. And, I think Flavorman sits in a really unique position with kind of how they've carved out. I mean, they have competition in the space. They're one of the smaller players in relative terms, but being not just in beverages, specifically being in the alcohol side of beverages, as we're seeing the growth on that side, from their perspective, I think it's just kind of a reflection of where the market is going today. And there's less of it on that kind of fundamental distillation side. There's a lot of whiskey out there that's been made that's got to go somewhere. And now it's going to turn into, what are brands going to do, and how are they going to expand their portfolios and take advantage of their distribution when they get it, their audience when they get it, sell somebody a $6 RTD to start, not a $50 bottle, things like that. And I think it just kind of reflects where they're going with that. That's my take on what they're doing. Not so much that, it's necessarily even bad for their business. They could be looking at that saying, hey, we see so much opportunity over here. We're going to shift. We're going to change course. This worked for a while, but going forward, we're positioned so well over here. We're going to take advantage of that.
Very good. And then another question for you guys. I mean, do you look at this as a sign of the times where it's like, hey, this might be the end of the eclipse when we're going to see new craft distilleries even coming anymore? Because A, the education's gone. B, the market's where it's at. Would we even, other than Horse Soldier, would just open up $200 million facility, but that's different. That's owned by a much larger organization. But is this going to be, like I said, a potential death of new craft distilleries popping up?
I just can't imagine a new craft distiller popping up right now. I mean, maybe taking over one, but yeah, that'd be hard to see a new one coming out. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a way where you can get around and educate yourself. Like, Michael Myers from 291 educated himself on how to make whiskey. I know, Lee Kennedy, who we're going to have on the show very soon, Kenny, he educated himself in a lot of ways. It's not that hard to get a book or get a distiller to learn from, or to hire a consultant, so if somebody really wants to start a distillery, Moonshine going under is not going to stop that. If they have the money and they have the will, they'll still find a way. But I do think that what it could do is those venture capitalist type people, those investor type people, when someone on the craft distilling side goes to look for money, and the money person starts doing the Google, they're going to come across this story and then 15 other stories, and we're like, yeah, I'm going to pass. That's probably what it will do more than anything, is the last few people who were willing to invest in an operation, this might be one of those, no, I'm good.
Yeah, finance is where the trouble is going to be. I see some comments saying that too. I mean, if anything's stopping it, I don't think it's going to be the lack of this program anymore. What I'll be interested to see is whether they pick it back up in a couple of years when we see a rebound, or whether ADI picks it up, or KDA, or somebody keeps breathing some sort of life into the program, so it's can be relaunched, because we'll need it again. But financing's not going to be there right now. So I think that's going to be the major issue.
I agree. Definitely agree. I guess the last thing to kind of ask on this is, now that we're starting to see the end of Moonshine U come across, some people in the chat have been saying, make sure you go check out episode 548 of the podcast, because we talked about the Council of Whiskey Masters. So do we think that there's going to be a new reigning champ of what is going to be for like next level education for people that are going into bourbon? Or do you think that it's going to take more advertising to kind of get the broader consumer base, or whether there are people that are working inside the industry to start wanting more of these programs? And obviously it's not going to come for free. You got to pay for these things.
Yeah, I've been asked to like develop these things before, and I've always turned them down. I've never felt these certifications were value added to someone getting a job, and so like for me, like that's where, if someone is trying to get a job, and they are, let's say it's a director of beverage at the Marriott Hotel, if you have one of these certifications, does that truly mean you know something more than someone who doesn't have a certification but has read all the books, knows, watches this fine here podcast and so forth? Does that mean you know more than them? Absolutely not. But it does help you get in the door a little bit. These accreditations only matter when there's like a governing body over them, or if there's a group that hires based on them. Otherwise, they're vanity. So, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the bourbon world. Like the "I know more than you" crowd is, festers at times at 3:00 in the morning on Facebook. So, I would say that if there's going to be plenty of places where people can get like a chain or a certificate or something like that says that they know more than someone else in whiskey. I don't think that will ever go away, but I don't think it's necessarily helpful for the industry.
Now you got to write a book, right? That's what it is.
No, I wouldn't advise writing a book. That's that is way more. That's like stabbing yourself in the eye with a pencil. Am I right, Brian? Like it's a lot of work.
It's a ton of work. Find something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Fred's point, like it would be nice if there was a sommelier certification for bourbon, or what's beer, like Cicerone, whatever they're like. That would be a great thing, and I think that's kind of how the Stave and Thief Society saw themselves as that. But that's just a long road to, one, build up the customers, build up the credibility, where you're not just throwing a random certification out there. And I'm sure everybody on this roundtable has had the same experience, where you go to a tasting or something and someone's like, well, what's your credentials to be doing this? I'm like, been talking about bourbon on the internet for like 14 years, and I read too much. Like I don't know, like I don't have those things. And that's a great thing. I think you could do either. Like you can get your education online and talking to people, visiting places, or if you're just getting into it and you don't know where to start, you can do a certification like this. But yeah, whether something else pops up behind it, I don't think the industry's at a point now where that makes the most sense.
Well, just to kind of say, kind of talking about being in this so long, that I didn't really take the test, as you said, probably because, Blake, we could almost write the test, right? And I think it's a little bit different than people coming into it. So that would be my kind of take from it, is maybe it's our scapegoat of saying, well, we didn't. It's like, yeah, at this point we could probably write the test. So, but yeah.
I mean, aren't these programs aren't they kind of symbolic of the industry just having a heyday and there being a lot of extra money to throw at it? You don't need the return. You don't need to see that return on investment when everything is going up and everything is selling. And you can send people to get those certifications and training. You can take them. There's tons of opportunity. And now I think we're going to see things tighten up to that degree. And yeah, if it's not, government mandated, if it's just voluntary, it's going to be more few and far between, and probably more specific, more on a consultation, direct for that company type of scenario, where that company is going to dig, each individual company in the space, or adjacent to the space is going to dig in with a consultant or somebody that's really going to be trying to show that progressive, expansion in the market or something like that. But certifications kind of for the sake of saying you have them, not leading anywhere else. I think that we've seen that eclipse and won't see that for a little while until bourbon swings back the other way.
And Nick, I'll add too, the certifications within the whiskey space are typically led by people within the industry. And that's always bothered me. And that's always bothered me because like sommeliers are governed by an independent body separate from the winemakers. And sometimes they go on to become winemakers. But there's so many things about whiskey that we don't know. Like I remember one year, I was doing an update on Bourbon Curious, and I was trying to find out where something, where corn was coming from, and then some guy who worked at Jim Beam was like, "Hey, we just bought like 6 tankers of Brown Foreman that was essentially going to be Woodford Reserve, and now it's going to be at Jim Beam," or something like that. There was some kind of story like that. And I just remember thinking that stuff is going to be in their warehouses. They won't have to disclose it came from Woodford after a certain amount of time. And then it'll be just in Jim Beam. And I just remember thinking, this is why a sommelier program in whiskey will never truly work, because you can't ever identify all the variables that are in tastings. And also the distillers don't know. Like for those who think that the master distillers know everything and are the end all be all, they don't know that their warehouse workers are going in those certain warehouses and drinking a barrel dry. That's why they have empty barrels, in some of those warehouses. I mean, they may know, but they're like, well, we can't really mess with them. We can't afford to get another group of workers like that. But there's just so many variables when it comes to American whiskey. It's hard to come to that level that we have with sommeliers. And I don't feel like until we have more transparency, and by the way, it is so much better now than it was 15 years ago. Until we have absolute transparency on things, like I just don't know if we can get there, And also I'm at the curmudgeon phase of my career because I got in the Hall of Fame, and this is my next chapter. I'm just going to be pissed off about everything now, like Chuck Cowdery.
Can we give a round of applause real quick? I don't think we've done it yet here, right? So yeah, round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. But I'm being serious. I'm like, I feel.
By the way,
like
I think
Chuck
that is your certification. So until we got a few of us, as soon as we catch up to you, you're in one club by yourself. One day we'll
everybody on here is going to be in the Hall of Fame. I assure you. Everybody, except maybe.
Well, now
Blake.
We got you as the mold to help be like, hey, voting's up. Who else should we have in this year? And it's like,
right?
It's like every year Fred just nominates somebody from the Roundtable. How weird is that?
No, Blake.
That's right.
Our nominations.
They don't want somebody from Florida in here in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. They're like, hold on, that guy's from Jacksonville? No, out immediately.
We need someone from Daytona Beach. Goddammit.
Daytona.
That's right.
But he made the Pappy Maps.
True. Well, actually, seeing how that the Bourbon Hall of Fame it isn't always pro Pappy, I would say maybe that would hurt him. But what Blake will be bringing to the table from when his nomination is up is how he single-handedly destroyed the 3-tier system with Sealbox.
There you go.
Who needs distributors when you got Sealbox?
I can't wait to hear the intro speech for Blake. It's going to just be glorious.
Amazing. All lies, but it'll be amazing.
Well, what a lead into the second half there, Fred. I think you queued it up that one pretty nicely there. So as everybody kind of knows, or maybe you are just now realizing it, news broke yesterday, and mostly all the news outlets were kind of asleep. So a lot of news happened today on Monday, but RNDC has now officially filed Chapter 11. Now, this isn't just a reorganization. This is a complete wind down of the entire organization. So right now, they were at one point the number 2 wine and spirits distributor, and we're doing around $11 billion in revenue as recently as 2024. And now, if we've seen in the past couple of months, I think we're probably approaching almost a year of it, maybe even longer than that. They've been selling off different organizations, different states, and everything like that. And they have liabilities between 1 billion and 10 billion across more than 100,000 creditors. And a lot of those creditors are distilleries holding those unpaid invoices. We can talk about what some of those are, but just to kind of let you know, back on Bourbon Community Roundtable number 76, so I guess it was a few years ago, January 2023 is when we actually started talking, with Sazerac leaving RNDC. What does this mean? Now we know, right? It didn't take too long to see those chips crumble. So do we think that Sazerac's exit was kind of like the spearhead that kind of really started the domino to fall here, and we started seeing this middle tier start blowing up? Love to hear y'all's thoughts on this.
Without a doubt, because they were caught flat-footed. They were trying to replace them with various brands, and just nobody had the heat that Buffalo Trace had. And really, when in 10 years we'll fully know, but we could be looking at this too as like one of those little pieces that started the crumbling of it all. Because how many small distillers and independent bottlers have complained to us privately and publicly that their distributor has not paid them? I know of one distillery that's owed $2 million by a distributor right now, from like last quarter sales. So how many times has that happened across the board? I'm not even saying RNDC, but just like all distributors.
It's a pretty common thing, unfortunately.
It's massive out there. And because you have to rely on that 3-tier system, those those distillers are now like, well, we can't pay the bank, or we can't do this. It's so bad. So if it did start all with Sazerac pulling out, was it designed? And if so, brilliance, brilliance. I mean,
that's true. But they were one piece of the puzzle. But it was Brown-Forman leaving after that. That was probably just. It's not a nail in the coffin, but it certainly didn't help their ability to regroup themselves. I mean, when you are reliant upon those particular kind of brands as being the ones that really kind of move the needle and sell a bunch of stuff for you, and now they're gone, you have no other choice but to sit there and start slashing headcount, slashing workforce until you can get other brands behind that you can go sell it and do something with. And they were just too far behind now. Blake, you were doing a little bit of research as well. You were kind of looking at actually who was owed some money. I think Proximo might have been at the top at like 94 million or something like that.
Yeah, Proximo was owed, yeah, in the 90 millions, which is just a pretty wild number when Proximo's a big company. Obviously, you have a lot of different brands, but it's hard to operate whenever you don't know when that cash is coming in the door. And when you're owed $90 million, and now this is going to be tied up in bankruptcy and everything else, like, to Fred's point, like, it is really hard to operate in this space when you have that going on. And there does need to be some sort of, I know we've talked about it before, but some sort of changes to those laws of how you're paid. Is the distributor the only source of revenue you're allowed to have? All those different things. But I mean, in RNDC's case in particular, it's just wild to see, but I think people don't realize like how thin of margins distributors operate on. You're talking 1% to 2% most of the time, and they're scaling up. I know they bought, was it Young's Market back in 22-ish, essentially doubled sales over the next few years. So going from 5 billion to 10 billion in sales, but you're still working off of a really tight margin, and you don't need much for that to all come crashing down. And I think that's exactly what happened here. There were smart people running the company. There were in a bad spot on a few different things, and as sales slow down, you lose some big suppliers. Your financing options get less and less, and we end up with this. Will we see this in a complete reorganization or restructuring of what the alcohol market looks like? I don't know. Maybe that's a big player, but if nothing else, from the consumer aspect, it does mean some of your favorite suppliers are probably not going to be on the shelf for a while. Like we've seen just even in DC where RNDC sold to Reyes, the transition is like, is this in? Yes, it's in. When's it coming? We don't know. Never mind, it's not in because we're doing this changeover now that we've been bought by Reyes, and there's just going to be a lot of that, which just means less sales for a lot of these brands that we love. But it's a crazy time. I mean, I think we probably felt like something could be coming down the line, but this is a top 50 privately held company in the country, by size, and to see them go bankrupt is just pretty wild.
It's wild to me that the margins are so small. I mean, they are at by law, they're mandated to be this middleman who skims off the top. I've seen distributor contracts and they are horrible for the producer. You can only have one at a time in most jurisdictions. There's a period between getting rid of one and the other. You can't terminate it for any reason except for cause without paying a huge penalty to the distributor. So they've got all of these advantages, and to still have thin margins and to still owe Proximo $94 million and a bunch of others just tens and tens of millions of dollars. I can't wait to be reading this bankruptcy file. Hopefully it doesn't take 10 years to figure it out. But I think within the next year, we're going to be able to see a lot of what's going on in the bankruptcy file. Hopefully there's people who follow it as closely as the Uncle Nearest stuff and publish this information, because it's just a colossal collapse.
If only I knew.
Shouldn't have happened.
If only I knew of a lawyer in the bourbon space who's written books who could help us understand this, to break down this bankruptcy deal. Do I know anyone like that, Brian?
I don't know. We need to consult with a bankruptcy attorney first. It is its whole new world. So I'm going to be interested more, and maybe I'll be one of the people in on it. I appreciate the support, but there's bad stuff happening here when it's this big of a collapse and they have that many advantages already right before them. I mean, it's incredible what distributors get to do in this industry, and to fail like this is it's so unexpected. I mean, maybe people saw it coming, all those sorts of things, but it shouldn't happen.
When I first got in the industry, 2006, I remember being at like a champagne tasting, and there were all these guys there in like $5,000 suits. I am not making this up. It's like massively expensive suits. They were driving the nicest cars, and I had no idea who these people were. I was like, I like talked to someone in the room. I was like, who the hell are those guys? They're like, those are the distributors. So they made so much money. Like if you were a sales rep for RNDC or Southern in 2006 to 2012, I mean, your starting salary, entry level, was like 80 grand, and then commissions. Now you step up, and before you know it, man, $300,000 in some cases. And if you make it to the executive level, massive bonuses. They were the best paying job in the business. And I think of all that talent that was out there that was, in the good old days, properly selling the whiskey, selling wine, knowing the information. And just in the last like 5 years, how much the education level dropped from these distributors and how much they actually passionately cared about the products they represented. I mean, there was a big change around the pandemic. I mean, we keep talking about it, but I saw a huge drop off in the sales force. What was really one of the most prestigious roles in the entire cog of the drinks business. Those guys in the nice suits with the nice cars, they were the envy of everybody. And just something happened. I don't know if they paid him differently or stopped giving him the Mercedes or what. But once upon a time, they were the envy of the entire industry.
I'm waiting for the Wolf of Wall Street style movie, The Distributors.
Yeah, honestly, Google it, man. You'll see some like, and every now and then there'll be, they get in trouble for like some kind of like scheme in Las Vegas, and someone gets a big fine. But man, gosh, they were it. They were the main cog in the cool wheel of liquor.
Well, and that's where, I mean, even on top of the bankruptcy news, you can Google the investigations that were happening a few years ago with like essentially bribing people, and you go swipe a card at a bar for $3,000 because you want to be in the, it could be a ruthless world where all those guys just have that credit card, they're swiping, and does it make sense to swipe a card for a few $1,000s just to have your bottle in the well that's going to sell, maybe 50 cases a year, but that's how things were incentivized. And whenever these sales reps, that they know what their how much they can use their card on and how many meals they can put on it and everything else like that. And they also know what case volumes they have to hit on the other side of their pro forma. And you just have a lot of messiness going on the back end. So if nothing else, I thought a lot of that would have gotten cleared up by now, but I think any kind of lawsuits on that side kind of ended a year or so ago, but those could come back up. You never know what's going to happen over the next year or two.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They have the money to pay for it anyway.
Kenny, I've got a thought or a question to throw out to the group. With this happening to RNDC and the inevitable incidents of other ones doing the same, can we see the wholesalers lobbyist group lessen its hold a little bit, because that's where they get their money, right? That's where they get their ability to like have lobbyists in DCs and states. Can we see their fight against direct to consumer shipping drop a little bit? Because I can see the Distilled Spirits Council seeing this as an opportunity to work on a more federal and state legislation for DTC.
I don't think so yet. I think they need another one to crash and burn before they really see that. And let's say we take the same exact playbook, the same exact one that took RNDC down, and you do it to Southern, or you do it to Reyes, or you do it to one of these big ones, and that really starts poking the hole in the system that, okay, you have three big players, two that really control 70 to 80% of all alcohol distribution across the US, and now they start toppling over. At what point do they start looking, oh, we need government bailouts, we need all this sort of stuff? Like, no, like this is a part of reform and change that has to happen. And that is going to be just one small inkling of an overarching story of what they can do to help other producers, or just help people that are mandated that you have to go through the system. And so now if there is another alternative serviceable route, cool. Well, at least you gave us that. But overall, I think that there still needs to be more players in that middle tier to make it more of a competitive industry. Right now, we're starting to see just the scatter happen. I kind of, once you start seeing Reyes start taking over all the RNDC states, I'm like, well, all you're doing is you're just sending the RNDC people to continue to start working on those brands over there across the pond. So like the same people just moved over. Like you're not changing culture, you're not changing anything, except you're just making the internal systems more chaotic until they figure that out. Same exact thing for brands that now have to exit RNDC, and they've got to go find somebody else, and they've got to go pitch their products to a distributor. And what is the common sort of thing that we hear amongst distributors right now? We're not taking new brands on right now. right? What other option do you have? You have nothing. So it's a very zero end game for a lot of producers out there that are looking for something as a route to market because of this forced legislative piece of it. But overall, I still think that we need to see another huge one topple over like this until you start seeing anything else have some real change.
So I was just looking up some of the smaller brands. I mean, you see the bigger ones, talked about Proximo, Luxco, MGP. The big ones are going to have a blip. They'll figure it out. I'm really curious how these small guys, unconfirmed, just kind of a quick search, but Law's Whiskey House, Taconic Distillery, Eric LeGrand Whiskey. So these are ones that when you start to build that story of, hey, here's a small person or brand kind of following their dream, building a company. And just by legislation, just by law, you've really got them handcuffed, and so will these small brands that are affected by this, and to what extent will they come through it? And could that be enough? Could there be enough impact in that group that says, geez, we need to change this, even if it's just for some of these smaller ones, or some limit on, what you do in a year or something like that, where they kind of carve out and say, look, we're going to have a different set of rules for these that the distributors don't really want. How do we make this work so that it's not these people can be in business, stay in business? And we'll see the cards fall. We'll see the dominoes fall over the next, months or years, however long it takes for this to really shake itself out. But I'm curious if kind of a small number of them that are smaller, but maybe are well known and have good stories, or really that attachment to consumers, that attachment to kind of the market, will have enough to kind of move the needle a little bit on the legislation side.
All right. So you need me to cue up another question for you all? Well, I guess so.
I don't know. I wasn't sure how much we were able to fight. I'm just looking at the clock and I'm like, is Kenny going to give us the wrap up? We're down to 5 minutes left.
Are we done? Yeah. I was doing the same thing.
I mean, I think it is. There's just a lot of shakeup that could come from this. I would actually disagree with Kenny, and I think the fact that RNDC is not there anymore and incentivized to lobby for a lot of the things that are going on, I think that does change the landscape. Now, it still could be multiple years down the road, but I mean, we see it on the Sealbox private reserve side all the time of like, hey, we want to go into Massachusetts. We talk to distributors, send samples, all this stuff. And it's like, we're going to pass on it. Okay, no problem. I've been rejected before. I'm fine with that. You reach out to another one, no response. You reach out to a third one, hey, not taking on any new brands. And it's like, okay, you don't allow shipping, you don't allow any other route into the market, but we also have to rely on it. And I get it from the distributor side. They're not bringing on brands that they don't think that they can sell and be profitable with, because it takes about the same amount of effort and onboarding of a brand doing 500 cases a year as a brand doing 50,000 cases a year. And I think that just highlights the fact that it is a broken system in ways. Distributors play a very key role for alcohol brands, but they don't play the only role for alcohol brands. And I think we're just seeing more and more of it now with all these shakeups.
I agree. And then beyond there, I mean, do you think that in the 100,000 creditor list, like how many craft brands do you think are in that 100,000?
I mean,
Too many.
their
They're
craft
host.
list wasn't huge. I know they had like a separate division for craft, or what we would consider craft brands. Um, but I mean, even Proximo, like we mentioned earlier, that it's a lot of bourbon brands that a lot of us probably drink from time to time, but there's probably a couple $100 million for these small craft distilleries and NDPs just sitting out there in limbo currently.
By sitting in limbo,
And
you mean, like,
RNDC probably wasn't.
So I was gonna say
RNDC probably wasn't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was like that. I think when you say in limbo, I think the cash just vanished in thin air. The odds of them getting paid are probably gonna be very nil.
Yeah, it's gone, and RNDC wasn't getting their bottles on shelves anyway. So it's it's just remarkable what they've done to these brands.
Now, some is that like so. How much of this is because the liquor stores stopped paying them? You know, that's the one part, like one part of the equation that I haven't really fully looked into or really honestly cared too much to. But I am curious to know, like, did the problem start because the liquor stores stopped, paying their bills, and the liquor stores stopped paying their bills because the bottles were sitting on the shelf and nobody was buying them? Like, there's just so many questions that I have of like how this all started, and there's so much forecasting, so much guessing going on in this business. Just it's fascinating if you are not a part of it or personally connected. Like, from a business perspective, when I tell people who are in business how this business works, they're like, "Holy cow, that's complicated. It's like, that makes no sense." I'm like, "Yeah, well, welcome to whiskey.
Welcome to the bourbon business. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's probably something that we could mention a little more is like the retailers. It's all state by state, but in DC, we have to pay the distributor on the 16th the following month. If you don't pay, you're on a no-fly list essentially, but that's not everywhere. So like in California, the distributor didn't have a lot of recourse against these retailers who didn't pay them. They're paying suppliers, and in a growing, expanding business, they have more that they have to pay suppliers because they could be net 30 or whatever, and the retailers net 45 based on the time of the month they order or whatever it is, and you just get backwards really quickly. I mean, I think it's all it's a funnel up approach. A lot of these brands, they just thought we're going to go crazy and turn into the next Penelope, and they didn't, and they bought 10 pallets of it, and the retailers didn't want it because their shelves are lined, and then whatever the retailer owed the distributor, they didn't pay or didn't pay on time because they weren't selling the stuff that they thought was already going to be moving, and just that whole system flowed backwards.
Sure did. Whole 3.5 years, and now we're here from the first time we talked about it. Pretty crazy. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this Bourbon Community Roundtable. We hit on two pretty juicy topics, and hopefully, maybe next time we can look at maybe something like a silver lining, like maybe some good news in the bourbon world. It feels like everything we talk about is very curmudgeon and just like downtrodden right now. But hey,
Doom
I
and
guess
gloom.
it sure is, right? Let's start finding some happy stories here soon. But let's go ahead and do some quick sign-offs. Nick, lead us out.
All right, not all doom and gloom, guys. I think I think it was you that said it a while back, Kenny. It's kind of like a whiskey renaissance. Even though maybe it's not being produced right now to that extent that it was over the past decade, there is so much of it, and I think we're going to see a lot more care from brands, that we're going to see a lot more non-distiller producers in the future, but probably a lot of care, a lot of smaller brands with just a few people behind them that really like take an effort to make really good whiskey and blend it really well. You guys are doing that. I mean, I think it's actually still a wonderful time to be into whiskey, and I'm excited for what the next 10 years has, despite the craziness that we're seeing now. But anyways, long sign off here. Nick for Breaking Bourbon. Always fun to chat. Not always fun to chat about the doom and gloom, but always fun to hear what everyone has to say and see the comments and everything like that. So cheers, y'all.
Yeah. Blake.
Yeah, Blake from Sealbox, and I didn't think it was all that doom and gloom. We're just talking about two key industries, companies collapsing, or not collapsing, but one gracefully so, one maybe not as graceful with bankruptcy. But I think it is important to take this historically of what's actually going on in the industry. Certainly, there's still a lot of people watching this show. There's a lot of people interested jumping in the chat, and if I pull my numbers correctly, bourbon hit in 2023 its peak revenue of 5.2 billion as a category. That's supplier level. It dropped drastically into 2025 at 5.1 billion. So we're talking about $100 billion is a significant number, but this is not bourbon falling off of a cliff. Like, the consumer is still there. people are still buying, brands are still growing. We see it all the time with different releases. There's just been a lot of shakeups in the industry, and with anything that grows as fast as bourbon did over the last decade to 2 decades, you're just going to have some shakeups. So I think it is always important to remind ourselves that people are still drinking, they're still talking about bourbon, sharing it with friends, and at the end of the day, I think that's why we're all here. So I will leave it at that.
For sure. And Brian, lead us out.
And I love that silver lining from both you guys, and I think you're right. Pruning is healthy, and that's what we're seeing. So, Brian was Sipping Corn and Bourbon Justice is a fun one. See you guys next month.
Yep. Well, that is going to do it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the live chat, being here as well. We had 2 hot topics, and we'll kind of see what other things creep up here in the next month. This is our first recording of our entire recording week. If you just happen to be here in Louisville, make sure you stop by Trial and Error and check us out, as we're doing live recordings all week this week, and then we'll be doing it again in August. So we'll put the dates out and the guests here relatively soon as well. But also make sure, if you like the show, subscribe, share it with a friend, leave a review, and drop something in the comments here on YouTube. Help the algo there as well, too. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Vodka sucks.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
All right.
So, Kenny, when you say live recording, does that mean it's going to be streaming, or is it just in studio live?
Well, we'll be in studio. We have a TV down here that we can turn it on as well, too. So
yeah,
if
but I
people
mean,
come,
but we're not
can
streaming
throw
it out to YouTube.
No. We're not going to do
Okay.
that. We could, but we're not going to.
We should start doing that, though.
No, we gotta. Somebody's gonna say something stupid, and then we're like, ah, crap. Now we gotta.
No
delete
chance
the
to
entire
edit it
live
out.
stream.
That's true. I
Yeah,
say a lot of
Fred,
stupid
I watch
things.
every episode from the legal standpoint and recommend it to be cut. So,
Have I ever said anything from a legal perspective that I shouldn't have said?
no, I would have let you know, and it's you have not been the offender.
But
So somebody else on the
no one
Bourbon
has.
Pursuit
I'm
side?
kidding. I'm kidding.
Are you
Insist.
talking about? Are you talking about on the regular show or just the roundtable?
No, I'm kidding about it entirely.
You
So
don't
since
watch-
you can't
Cecil
say
is the
Brian,
only
why
one
was it
kidding.
Ryan?
Kenny,
yeah.
he's kidding because he doesn't watch the show. That's what he's kidding
Yeah.
about.
He's kidding about everything. It doesn't matter.
Cecil's the only one who I've had to slow his roll a couple of times on the round table.
There you go.
Yeah, no, you may not want to go that route. You may not want to say that.
As soon as
So does
you-
that mean he's back from his 5th vacation? Is that
Yeah, that's
Well,
when
that's
the
why
live
he's on the
recording
vacation.
start.
Kenny,
Yeah.
Oh, he's got to get
Kenny's
ready.
back
sending
tomorrow.
him.
All right.
He'll be back tomorrow, right, Kenny?
He was in the chat. I think he might have had a blip of Wi-Fi on the plane or something like that.
Mm.
So he was here for. Oh, there you go.
I'm the one he's
he's
talking
talking
about.
about.
Yeah, there
Um,
champ right there.
which I didn't realize you had me now doing your email campaigns. I saw the oops email. We put the wrong dates in. I'm like, hey, it happens to the best of us.
It sure does,
happens.
doesn't
it?
That's how I get people to read it twice.
Yeah, exactly.
It was actually kind of funny, Nick. You said that because the first Bird Pursuit email went out and it had the wrong ones, and I was like, fuck it, whatever. And then Kelsey and our team, she sent out the one on the Pursuit Spirits email saying, hey, come and do this. And then all of a sudden, the flood of emails come in and we're like, you got the wrong dates, blah, blah, blah. She's like, should I send out a repeat? I was like, yeah, might as well. At least we know people are reading the newsletter. So
Yeah.
that's a positive.
Always a good thing. Yeah.
Hit him again. All right, I'm gonna end the stream so we can get back to our evening. But thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all here in about a month.
All right, man.
Cheers, everybody.
Tomorrow, Kenny.